Hey everyone, it's just Juice here, and today I wanted to continue the series that I've been doing on my channel for a little while now, where I talk about what games I have been playing each month. So I had a moderately productive month this month in terms of my gaming goals. I had some things come up that made finding time to play games a little bit more difficult, but I still did get some of my goals accomplished, so I'm glad for that. And I interestingly found that this month I played a lot more variety of games than I did in previous months, but I didn't spend as much time really with each and every individual game, and so there's probably going to be a lot of games included on my list this month that are probably going to carry over into next month just because I haven't had enough time to really, sink my teeth into them properly. So without any further ado, I want to get right into things, and we're going to start off talking with a game that I was sort of finishing up just from last month, and that game is Pokemon Legends ZA. So yeah, I've been talking about this game for about 3 months or so on the channel at this point, so yeah, no, it's been a pretty long time. And honestly, the more that I have just sat with and played more of the game, the more I find myself enjoying it more and more. One thing that I can say upon completing the game that I wasn't really able to say before is that the amount of content that is included in this game I think is amazing. Just doing some of the side quests and progressing through the main narrative of the game took me some 32 hours or so, and it was a big complaint when the game was first announced to have a DLC that was launching on the same day that, there was this big worry basically that there was going to be this lack of content in the base game and you needed to buy this DLC in order to get access to, a proper fully fledged sort of end game portion for the game. And while I'm sure having that DLC does increase the amount of content in the game and will increase the playtime by quite a bit, just the base game on its own I still thought offered a more than complete experience. And I do have to say that some of the content that is featured towards the end of the game is really some of the best content in the game. In terms of the side content, I sort of came across these really sort of odd but neat and memorable side quests that were present towards the end of the game. I think that these might be intended to be more sort of post-game content, just because they are a little bit more, in-depth and interesting than some of the other previous side quests that I encountered during the game. One of my favorite side quests towards the end of the game was this side quest that involved a Litwick. Your character follows this Litwick around, and I guess it's a part of their lore that they feed off energy from people. And so there was this one particular Litwick that was really just needed a charge, and so basically what ended up happening was you follow this Litwick around, and apparently it's lured this child into its lair, so people are worried about what's going to happen to the kid. You eventually find where the Litwick is keeping the kid, and the Litwick ends up sapping your energy and knocking you out, which results in this Litwick jump scare. Yeah, this is by far one of the most memorable side quests and moments in the game for me. I thought it was really funny. But also, the main quest for this part of the game is exceptionally done as well. Without getting too much into spoilers, the sort of city map that you've been playing in throughout the story does change a little bit towards the final mission. In working your way through that final area with all of those obstacles and, Pokemon that are in the way, it was a really fun little section of the game to get through in the end. And again, without spoiling too much, the final battle was super impressive. I guess one slight spoiler, there is a legendary Pokemon that's involved, and their role in that sort of final battle section I thought was super cool. And yeah, I can honestly say that after having finished the game, I do think that the game successfully follows up on the Legends Arceus formula in a lot of ways. And in so many ways, I do think it is superior, and it does give me a lot of confidence in what the Pokemon franchise can do in the future, so that's really exciting. As for the game itself, I honestly think it's fantastic. If you are a Pokemon fan and you've been hesitant holding out on getting ZA, I would recommend that you definitely get it, because in my opinion, for the price that is being charged and the amount of content that you get out of it, I think that the game is totally worth. I think it is so much fun. I've been having a great time with it. Honestly, this is one of the most fun experiences that I've had with Pokemon for years in terms of the franchise, so I would absolutely consider this a massive win and totally recommend it if you haven't played it yet. Okay, so on to the next game real quick. I'm going to mention this one very quickly because I've also been talking about it quite a bit, but let's talk a little bit about Animal Crossing New Horizons. So yeah, I returned to Animal Crossing earlier this year with the introduction of the 3.0 update in the Nintendo Switch 2 edition. I have been playing the game on my Nintendo Switch 2, and I have been super enjoying returning to the game. However, I will admit this month I have definitely slowed down my Animal Crossing playtime by quite a bit, and that is in no small part because there is a very similar game that came out this month that I have been playing a little bit more in its place. The gameplay is sort of beginning to get a little bit repetitive, and, you know, it's the type of thing that, you know, isn't as interesting now because I have played Animal Crossing New Horizons previously, so naturally it isn't going to be quite as exciting the second time. That being said, I still do love Animal Crossing, and it's been such a blast to return to it. It's nice just to check in on your villagers every so often and, you know, see what's going on in your town every once in a while. That's something that I'm probably going to continue doing in the next few months, but I'm honestly at a point with the game where I'm not too sure if I'll mention it more in these upcoming videos unless I feel particularly inclined to. So yeah, that's it for Animal Crossing. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a game that was definitely an unexpected but welcome addition to this list. And that game is Metroid Prime Remastered. So yeah, I wasn't planning on playing this game this month at all. In fact, I didn't own the game before this month, but there was actually a local convention at my local mall where I live, and there was a booth that was there. They were selling some Switch games. I decided to, you know, take a look and see what they had, see if they had any good deals, and automatically this stood out to me the moment that I saw it. I mean, Metroid Prime Remastered is already a pretty cheap game on the Nintendo Switch. I think on the eShop it's something like $55 normally or something like that, and I think that's in Canadian as well, so overall the game isn't, you know, a full price game. But I mean, obviously it's Metroid Prime. This is one of the highest rated games of all time, ever. So of course there's still going to be a value in buying it, and when I saw it at the convention where, you know, I could buy it used for a cheaper price, I thought to myself, you know what, I think I am going to buy this. This was something that I wasn't sure that I was ever actually going to get, because I do own the original game, but at the discounted price that I got it at, I thought, you know what the heck, this is worth. So I bought the game, and I've played it for about a couple hours or so at this point, and I have to say that, I mean, this game is fantastic. It has such a fun opening sequence. It does such a great job of bringing that classic sort of Metroid-style gameplay to 3D. The fact that this was the first game in its franchise and it already got so much right is really kind of unbelievable. Everything from the music to the visuals to the atmosphere, they are all fantastic, and they have all been enhanced through this remaster. But as I've been playing it, what I sort of noticed, and upon doing more research, what I found out is that this game isn't really a remaster at all. It's kind of a from the ground up remake. Of course, the gameplay style is very authentic to the original game, but while that's true, everything about the game has been turned up to 11 and has been modernized in a lot of ways as well. So yeah, I'm having a ton of fun exploring the areas that are presented in this game. It's one that I would definitely like to spend a lot more time with coming up in the future. I'm not too sure if it will be, you know, my top priority over the next few months, but at some point in time, I will definitely come back and play through this game because, yeah, no, already through the first couple hours, I've been totally sold on that experience. If you have played Metroid Prime, and in particular if you've played Metroid Prime Remastered on the Nintendo Switch, let me know if you'd consider it as being a game that is worth my time. Okay, so I want to round off the Nintendo Switch section here with one final game. I alluded to it earlier, and of course I am talking about Pokemon Pokopia. So yeah, Pokopia was an interesting one because it wasn't a game that I was originally planning to get. However, I did end up getting it, and I have played it a little bit. And from what I've played so far, I think that, you know, this game is lovely. It is a cozy game to the max, a life sim that is very much so in the same style as something like Animal Crossing, but it does take some elements from some other games as well. Notably, the game is made by the same developers as Dragon Quest Builders, so it does take a lot of cues from those games. And yeah, the gameplay loop is really fun and satisfying. Basically, the game consists of, I would say, two sort of core parts. The first part is exploration. So you are in this sort of like deserted version of the Pokemon world for some mysterious reason. The humans have disappeared, and up until very recently, most of the Pokemon had seemingly disappeared as well. So it falls to you as this Ditto creature, and you have to basically rebuild the Pokemon world. You build Pokemon habitats and houses, which encourages them to sort of come live where you are. And slowly, as you make your way through the game, you're going to meet more and more Pokemon that will come and live alongside you. And in turn, you get to unlock more and more areas, opening up different areas of the map to then further explore and find more new Pokemon. And of course, you have the Dragon Quest Builders element as well, which allows you to build different structures and settlements. And yeah, honestly, I just love the gameplay loop of this game so much. It's fun to be around all of these adorable Pokemon. You get the chance to talk with them since you do play as a Ditto. You are yourself a Pokemon and therefore have the ability to communicate with them. And all of the Pokemon are just so cute. Their dialogue is so funny. A lot of the Pokemon have different personalities depending on, what types they are, what moves they know. So every time that you meet a new Pokemon, it is honestly just really exciting. And because all of these Pokemon are so, cute and enjoyable, when the Pokemon sort of ask you to, do them favors, help them build things, you are going to be a lot more likely to achieve that in the game because you want to make your little Pokemon villagers happy. And yeah, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the lore to this game is very interesting. This is the first time that we are seeing a Pokemon world, I believe, that is really devoid of humans. Or rather, a version of the mainline Pokemon world that is devoid of humans. I think that's usually the case in things like Mystery Dungeon and stuff like that. But yeah, as you go along, you get to learn a little bit more about the world and what's really, sort of going on here. And I won't do any story spoilers here in case you want to play the game for yourself, but I just think that the world, the sort of post-apocalyptic sort of state that the world of Pokemon Pocopia sort of presents to the player is very interesting, and it's a new take on the Pokemon franchise that we haven't seen before that does help to give this game a little bit of an extra flair. On occasion, Pokemon will make remarks about how they miss their trainers and they miss their humans, and it's honestly just really sort of heartbreaking. It's so emotional to the point that I'm surprised, the Pokemon Company, a company that is usually focused on, appealing to kids, would make such, strong emotional material. But yeah, no, I've seriously been loving this game. The progression and the gameplay mechanics are just, so natural feeling. It's honestly so much fun. I've been having a great time with it so far. Again, this is something that I would recommend if you are a Switch 2 owner and you don't have Pokemon Pocopia yet and you usually like this type of game. I would totally recommend it because in terms of, those sort of life sim, sort of cozy comfort games, this I really think is one of the best that you could opt for. So that is it for the Nintendo Switch games. However, it is actually not it for Nintendo games this month. That's right, people, I decided to go back to my childhood because of the new movie that is coming out that goes right along with this game. Of course, I am talking about Super Mario Galaxy. Yeah, so, of course, while not in this month, not in March, but it just now in April, we've gotten the release of the Super Mario Galaxy movie. As I am sitting here recording this, I haven't seen the film yet, so I can't really give my thoughts on it, but just a lot of the news and the hype that has been generated around that film has recaptured my interest in this game. So I decided a little bit more recently to boot up the game again for the first time in a long time, really. And honestly, all I have to say is that it is so much fun coming back to this thing. Everything about this game was just fantastic. I honestly am not sure if Mario has ever been presented in a more epic and cool way. I do think that I like Mario Odyssey better than Super Mario Galaxy, but a part of me thinks that Super Mario Galaxy is more cool, if that makes sense. One thing that really stood out to me upon replaying the game was the sort of cinematics, a lot of those early cutscenes from the game. When I was rewatching them, they did really feel very cinematic. They felt definitely very epic. And that's a vibe that I'm not too sure that Mario has ever tried to go for as hard again as they did with this game. A lot of the levels are just filled with tons of cool stuff. It really helps to make the game feel like this epic, grandiose adventure more so than just, a Mario platformer. And what further elevates the game to that level again is the music. If you've ever played this game or are familiar with its soundtrack, you know that it is absolutely wonderful. All of the themes totally hold up. I love the fact that they brought in a full orchestra to do the score. It does really just bring this sense of gravitas to the game. And while I only did replay through some of the earlier levels in the game, I haven't worked my way through the game in its entirety yet, I have to say that a lot of the mechanics that were included in this game, especially for the time that they were made, are really, really genius. Like all of the gravity mechanics using the different planets, and how the camera will sort of like move and adjust automatically to where it is best suited depending on wherever it is that you're standing, is really impressive and shows that Nintendo put a lot of effort into just the little details of this game, making sure that everything functions well and functions right. And of course, in addition to all that, the core mechanics are as good as they are in any other Mario game. Mario is amazing to control, especially again, like I said, with those gravity mechanics and everything else that they've added in the game. And I honestly really enjoy that the levels in this one are sort of segmented into more linear sections. It makes just picking up and playing the game for a little while honestly a lot easier than it is in some of the other games, where the levels are much larger and can almost at times feel like overwhelming to get through. Although, honestly, I don't think that they feel very overwhelming very often. There just happens to be a lot of content to explore there, and so it just takes a little while. While in this game, it's a lot more straightforward to progress and, you know, collect the stars and everything like that. And as somebody who has definitely been a lot more pressed for time this past month in terms of my free time for gaming, that's something that I definitely appreciate about this game. So yeah, if you have somehow never played Mario Galaxy, I would totally suggest that you do so. I've been having such a fun time returning to it. Like I said, this is a childhood classic game for me, but even just removing myself from that bias, the game is superbly well made. While I've been playing the game on the Wii just because I wanted that authentic sort of classic experience, the game is also available on the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. It is a little bit pricey on those eShops, but honestly, if you don't own those games, honestly, whatever price you have to pay for both Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2 are totally worth it, as they are really just some of the best games ever made. So that's a very brief side tangent about Mario Galaxy. Now I want to talk about the games that I've been playing for my PlayStation. I really actually only played one PlayStation game this month, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm planning on making a video on that game that I'm talking about, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you know, I will say some of my general thoughts on the game. And that game, while I don't specifically have a copy of the cartridge, it was in this collection, the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection. I played the very first Metal Gear for the MSX2 for the first time. Yeah, I had messed around with the original Metal Gear a little bit when I first got this collection, but I never really sat down to properly work my way through the game. Honestly, the game just felt a lot older and sort of like stiff in comparison to a lot of the later games, to the point where it didn't really captivate my interest in seeing the game all the way through. However, I recently decided that I want to, on this channel, go through the entirety of the Metal Gear Solid series, hopefully in time for the release of Metal Gear Solid 4, with the release of the Master Collection Volume 2 later this year. We'll see if that happens. I'm not going to 100% for sure stick to that goal, but hopefully we can make it there. So yeah, what better place to start in exploring this franchise with the very first game? And I do have to say, as someone who is a Metal Gear fan and who has played most of the other games in the franchise, it was really interesting going back to the original and seeing the roots of this great series that I've come to love. I noticed that a lot of the core elements of some of these later games are present in this game. It's just in a lot more of like a rough sort of form. The game features a lot of similar mechanics and puzzles that are present in the later parts of this franchise. Things like using a remote control missile to destroy a faraway control panel, using key cards to unlock doors that were previously locked to open up more of the map, even basic things like making sure to, you know, avoid enemies instead of engage them in combat. That is a core mechanic for the franchise that really started with this game. And it's really cool because this is one of the games that really helped to popularize the stealth genre. I believe that there were stealth games made before Metal Gear, but none of them were made to Metal Gear's same quality. And none of them were also quite as popular. So in a lot of ways, Metal Gear is really the first stealth game. Or at least it's the first stealth game that really mattered. One thing that I did find disappointing about this game in comparison to some of the later entries in the franchise is that the story is honestly kind of lacking. You do play Solid Snake, and this game does act as the start of that iconic character's story, but there's really not that much going on here to speak of in terms of character development or even plot twists, save one minorly interesting plot twist towards the end of the game. The game overall has a very simple premise. You play as Solid Snake, who is this rookie soldier in this special unit called Foxhound, which specializes in solo stealth infiltration, and your mission is to destroy this mysterious ultimate weapon called Metal Gear. As you explore the facility, you have the opportunity to rescue various POWs. As you rescue those POWs, you can gain progress towards increasing your rank. As your rank increases, you get extra health and ammo, and as you explore the facility, you'll also find various items and weapons to use to help you basically make your way through the base and ultimately destroy Metal Gear. There are a lot of neat little puzzles and gameplay ideas that are present in this game. For a game that was made in 1987, I honestly think that this is very packed and filled with a lot of unique and creative ideas that were totally different than what other game studios were doing at the time. However, while those ideas are definitely very novel, I guess I would say now, especially if you take a look at, older games, if you judge the game in comparison to a lot of the later games in the franchise, it really does stand out as being a more sort of simplified, watered down version of that style of gameplay, which unfortunately doesn't make the game particularly appealing. A lot of people will ask when they're trying to get into Metal Gear Solid and the Metal Gear franchise for the first time, where do I start with? Do I have to start with these older games? Because, there is some stuff in here that is relevant for the Metal Gear storyline later on. But overall, honestly, I think that you can get enough context from playing the later games in the franchise where you can just skip this one. Especially because literally every other Metal Gear game that comes out after this one I would consider to be better than it. But yeah, no, there are definitely some parts of the game that are memorable and worthwhile to experience. There are going to be some very slight spoilers ahead. I'm going to talk about something just, really quickly, so if you are interested in avoiding spoilers for this game, I would just fast forward the video by about a minute. But yeah, one of the more interesting points about this game is the plot twist that is present in the game towards the end. So, throughout most of the game, you are taking orders from the commander of Foxhound, who's named Big Boss. And what ends up getting revealed towards the end of the game is that Big Boss is not just the leader of your unit, but he's also the leader of the terrorist organization that you are trying to infiltrate and destroy. Big Boss sent you in as a rookie because he thought that you weren't going to be any match for the challenges that he set forth. So the whole mission was meant to be some type of trick and basically some setup for Snake to get killed. And you do have a little bit of a fight with him towards the end of the game as well, which is pretty cool, but unfortunately he's not very strong, so it's not a super interesting boss fight or anything like that. So yeah, overall I thought that the game was, it was pretty good. It wasn't amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and like I said, I do think that all of the later entries in the franchise are better than this game, but there are some interesting aspects to it. Especially, I think if you are a big Metal Gear Solid fan, like if you're a fan of the franchise, you will probably enjoy getting to see some of how this franchise first got started with, its very first game. There are also some little bits of important lore aspects that are discussed in this game as well, that all come up, in subsequent entries in the franchise. But the story isn't so complicated or important to the point where you have to play this game in order to understand the rest. So for all but the, biggest Metal Gear Solid fans, I would probably recommend just skipping over this one, especially if you're looking to get into the franchise for the first time. So yeah, just because I am making a dedicated video about that game in the future, I'm going to stop talking about that for now. Don't want to save some of my thoughts for that video. But yeah, those were really all the games that I played in March. Let me know, have you played any of the games that I discussed in this video? What were your thoughts on them? Also, let me know, what games have you been playing this month? Anything that you would recommend for me to check out in the future? Anything that you think would be interesting for me to cover on the channel? Just let me know. Until next time, everybody, I'm Just Juice, and that's just my opinion. Thank you all for watching, and take care.